I'm Natasha, and in this episode, we're going to dive into how real-life stories can help improve your English listening and writing skills. Have you ever struggled to understand a story or a conversation in English? Do you wish you could write better after listening? Well, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to listen to some interesting stories, and I'll share examples from my own life. By the end of this episode, you'll notice improvement in your listening and writing abilities. And don't forget, if you enjoy this episode, make sure to press that like button. Now let's get started with a question for you. Think about a time when you had to solve a big problem. What did you do? How did you handle it? Everyone faces challenges in life, and learning from others' experiences can be so valuable. Today, I'll share a story with you about a time I had to make an important decision for my family. A few years ago, my husband and I decided to move to a new city for work. It was a huge decision, and we were both excited but nervous at the same time. We had to think about everything: where to live, what schools were best for our kids, and how to find a good job. At first, we were both overwhelmed by all the options. But we made a list of priorities and focused on the things that mattered most to us. We also took time to talk to people who had moved to the city before. Hearing their stories helped us feel more confident about our decision. Some people told us about the struggles they faced, while others shared the benefits of living in this new place. We took notes, listened carefully, and thought about how their experiences could help us. By listening to their stories, we were able to make a decision that worked for our family. Moving to the city turned out to be a great choice, and we've been very happy here. What about you? Have you ever made a decision that seemed hard at first, but turned out to be the right one? Now let's look at how listening to stories like these can help improve your English skills. When you listen to real-life stories, you get to hear how people express themselves in different situations. This helps you understand new vocabulary, sentence structures, and the way people organize their thoughts. By practicing your listening skills, you can start using these expressions in your own conversations. Here's another story for you. A friend of mine, Michael, recently had a challenge at work. He was working on a project that required him to collaborate with a team of people from different countries. At first, the team faced communication problems. Some members didn't speak English fluently, and others had different ways of expressing their ideas. Michael realized that it wasn't enough just to speak English well. He had to adjust his communication style to work better with the team. He started paying attention to how each person communicated and adapted his own style to make sure everyone understood. By listening carefully to others, he was able to create an environment where everyone could contribute effectively. The project ended up being a success, and the team learned a lot from each other. This is a great example of how listening is key to understanding different perspectives. When you pay attention to how others speak and express themselves, you improve your own communication skills. This can be very helpful in both personal and professional situations. As we continue today's episode, think about the people you interact with every day. Do you listen carefully to what they say? And how can you improve your own speaking and writing by paying attention to their... In a similar story, I remember a time when I had to give a presentation at work. I was nervous because I had never spoken in front of such a large group before. To prepare, I watched videos of people who were great public speakers. I paid close attention to their tone, pace, and body language. I also listened to how they structured their speeches, focusing on the key points they made. After practicing and learning from those examples, I felt much more confident. My presentation went smoothly, and the feedback I received was great. What? Can you learn from others' experiences to improve your own skills? Think about it as you listen to today's stories. Every time you hear a story, you're practicing your listening skills. And the more you listen, the better you'll become at understanding different English accents, vocabulary, and expressions. So, the next time you hear someone telling a story, pay close attention to how they speak. Notice how they use words, phrases, and body language to make their story engaging. This will help you improve your own writing and speaking skills. Remember, by listening to real-life stories, you not only practice English but also learn how to communicate better in everyday situations. So, keep practicing and listen to as many stories as you can. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll become. Let's keep going. I want to share another story. This one's about my friend Daniel. Daniel runs his own small business. And when he first started, his biggest challenge was talking to customers in English. He knew the basics, but when customers asked detailed questions, he sometimes got nervous and didn't know how to respond clearly. One day a customer called and asked about a product Daniel didn't know much about. Instead of panicking, Daniel stayed calm and focused on listening carefully. He repeated the customer's question to make sure he understood it right. Then he said, "Let me check the details for you, and I'll get back to you in a few minutes." This gave him time to find the right information without feeling rushed. When he called the customer back, he explained everything clearly and even gave some extra advice on how to use the product. The customer was really happy with his service and thanked him for being so helpful. After that, Daniel realized how important it is to listen first, take your time, and then respond thoughtfully. This is a great example of how listening can help you become a better communicator. When you really focus on what someone is saying, you understand their needs better and respond more clearly. And if you're not sure about something, it's okay to take a moment to think before you answer, just like Daniel did. Have you ever been in a situation like that? Maybe someone asked you something in English and you weren't sure how to respond right away? It's completely normal. The important thing is to stay calm, listen carefully, and take your time to answer. Let's think about how listening helps. With writing, too. When you listen to real conversations, you learn how people naturally use English. You pick up on common phrases, sentence structures, and vocabulary. Later, when you write an email or a message, you can use those same expressions to sound more natural and confident. For example, my cousin Emily recently applied for a job. She wasn't sure how to write a professional email in English, so she started paying attention to how people write emails at work. She noticed how they started with polite greetings like, "Dear Mr. Smith," and ended with phrases like, "best," "regards," or "sincerely." By listening and reading carefully, Emily learned how to write her own emails in a clear and respectful way. She even practiced by writing short messages to her friends and family in English. Over time, her writing improved a lot, and when she finally sent her job application, she felt much more confident. So if you want to improve your writing, start by listening. Listen to how people speak and the words they use. Then try using those same words in your own writing. You'll see a big difference in how natural and clear your English sounds. We'll keep going, but before that, take a second to think. What's one thing you've learned just from listening to others? Maybe a new word, a helpful phrase, or even a better way to express your thoughts? Keep that in mind as we move on to the next story. All right, let's dive even deeper into this. I want you to really think about how listening carefully can change the way you communicate, not just in English, but in life. So let me tell you a longer and more detailed story about someone I know. His name is David. He's a hardworking guy, and his journey with learning English has taught me a lot about patience, listening, and how small steps can lead to big success. David moved to an English-speaking country a few years ago for work. Back then, his English was very basic. He could say simple things like, "Hello, how are you?" and "thank you." But when it came to having a real conversation, he often felt lost. He struggled to understand people because they spoke too fast, and sometimes they used words he had never heard before. One day, His boss asked him to attend a meeting with clients. David was really nervous because he knew they'd be discussing important things, and he was afraid he wouldn't understand. But instead of panicking, he made a plan. Before the meeting, he prepared by listening to business-related conversations online. He paid attention to common phrases and how people discussed work topics in English. He also wrote down some useful expressions like, "Could you repeat that, please?" and "Let me make sure I understand." When the meeting started, David focused completely on listening. He didn't worry about speaking right away. He just listened. He noticed how people took turns speaking, how they asked questions, and how they responded politely. Even when he didn't understand every word, he listened for the main ideas. If someone said something too fast or used a difficult word, he didn't pretend to understand. He asked them to repeat it or explain it in a different way. After the meeting, his boss told him he had done a great job just by being attentive and asking good questions. That moment gave David a lot of confidence. He realized that listening carefully helped him understand not just the words people were saying, but the meaning behind them. But David didn't stop there. He decided to keep improving his English by listening more every day. He listened to conversations at work, paid attention to how his coworkers explained things, and even started listening to English podcasts on his way to work. He made it a habit to write down new words and phrases he heard, and then he'd try using them in his own conversations. One day, something amazing happened. His boss asked him to lead a small team project. David was surprised because just a year ago he was struggling to understand meetings, and now he was being trusted to lead one. During the project, David used everything he had learned from listening. He communicated clearly, made sure everyone understood their tasks, and encouraged his team to share their ideas. At the end of the project, his boss praised him not just for his leadership, but for his excellent communication skills. David felt proud because he knew how far he had come, and it all started with listening. So why am I telling you David's story? Because his journey shows how powerful listening can be. When you listen carefully, you learn the right words and phrases. You understand how conversations flow, and you start picking up the small details that make your English sound natural. If you want to improve your speaking and writing, start by becoming a better listener. Listen to how people greet each other, how they ask for help, and how they explain their ideas. Pay attention to the words they use and the way they say them. And don't just listen passively. Take notes, repeat what you hear, and practice using those words yourself. Let me give you another example. My neighbor Sarah wanted to improve her writing skills because she was applying for a new job. She realized that listening to how people spoke in professional situations could help her write better, so she started listening to interviews and business discussions in English. She noticed how people introduced themselves, how they explained their experience, and how they answered questions. Sarah took notes and practiced writing similar sentences. When she wrote her job application, she used the same clear and professional language she had heard. And guess what? She got the job. Listening helped her understand how to express her ideas clearly, and that made all the difference. Now, think about your own English journey. What's one thing you could do today to become a better listener? Maybe you could listen to a conversation and write down any new words you hear. Or you could practice repeating sentences to get more comfortable with pronunciation. Whatever it is, remember, the more you listen, the better your English will become. And don't worry if you don't understand everything right away. Listening takes practice, and it's okay to ask people to repeat themselves or explain things differently. The important thing is to stay patient and keep trying. So let's keep going. I have more stories and tips to share, and I know you're going to learn a lot from them. Ready for the next one? Let's do this. All right. Let's keep going. And this time, I want to take you even deeper into how listening can completely transform your English skills. I want you to imagine something. You're in a new country where everyone speaks English. You're excited, but also a little nervous, right? You know some English, but when people start talking quickly, using words and expressions you don't know, it feels overwhelming. That's exactly what happened to my friend Ahmed when he moved to Canada with his wife and 2 kids. Ahmed had studied English in school, but when he arrived, he realized that classroom English and real-life English were very different. People used slang, spoke fast, and often shortened their words. Simple conversations, like asking for directions or ordering food, became stressful because he couldn't always understand what people were saying. But instead of getting discouraged, Ahmed made a decision. He was going to focus on listening. Every day he practiced listening to English in different ways. He listened to people talking at the grocery store. He listened when his kids spoke to their teachers. He even started listening to his neighbors when they chatted outside. And every time he heard a new word or phrase, he wrote it down in a little notebook he carried everywhere. One day, Ahmed's wife asked him to go to the bank and open a new account. He was nervous because he knew the conversation would involve a lot of formal English, and he didn't want to make any mistakes. But he remembered his listening practice and told himself to stay calm. When he got to the bank, the clerk greeted him warmly and asked how she could help. Ahmed listened carefully to every word, paying attention not just to what she said, but how she said it. He noticed her polite tone and the phrases she used, like, "How can I assist you today?" And "Would you like me to explain the different account options?" Instead of rushing to respond, Ahmed took a second to think. He repeated the important parts of her question to make sure he understood. "So, you're asking if I want to know about the different types of accounts? Is that right?" The clerk smiled and said, "Exactly." By listening carefully and taking his time, Ahmed avoided misunderstandings and had a smooth conversation. He asked questions when he didn't understand something, like, "Could you explain what a savings account is and what do you mean by transaction fees?" The clerk appreciated his effort, and by the end of the conversation, Ahmed felt more confident than ever. But Ahmed didn't stop there. He knew that listening wasn't just about understanding words. It was also about learning how to use them. After his visit to the bank, he practiced the new phrases he had learned. He asked his wife, "How can I assist you with dinner tonight?" And when his kids needed help with homework, he said, "Would you like me to explain this part?" Again. The more Ahmed listened and practiced, the more natural his English became. And the more natural his English became, the more confident he felt. Eventually, people started complimenting him on how clear and polite his speaking. I'm glad you're sticking with me because we're going to go even deeper now. Let's talk more about how listening can open up new doors for you, not just in English, but in many areas of life. I've got a few more stories that will really help you see how improving your listening skills can bring real benefits. So let's think about communication in the workplace. Imagine you're in a meeting at your job, surrounded by colleagues and a boss who speaks very quickly. They start discussing a new project, and you feel a little lost. There are so many words you don't know, and you're unsure if you should speak up or just listen. This happens to a lot of English learners, right? But guess what? The more you focus on listening carefully, the more confident you'll feel in those situations. Take my friend Michael, for example. Michael is an engineer who works at a large company. When he first started his job, he struggled with understanding his colleagues, especially when they used technical terms in fast conversations. He was afraid he would look unprofessional if he asked them to repeat things. But then he remembered something his language teacher had told him. If you don't understand something, it's okay to ask for clarification. So, Michael decided to embrace this advice. Instead of staying quiet or pretending to understand, He made it his goal to ask questions when he didn't understand something. During a meeting about a new product design, his colleague Sam said something that sounded like feedback loop, but Michael didn't quite catch it. Instead of nodding along and staying silent, Michael said, "I'm sorry, could you explain what you mean by feedback loop?" Sam smiled and explained, "It's a process where we make changes based on customer feedback. It's how we improve the product over time." By asking for clarification, Michael didn't just understand the term. He also showed his colleagues that he was paying attention. The more he asked questions like this in meetings, the better he got at understanding the technical side of his job. His colleagues respected him more because they saw that he wasn't afraid to admit when he needed help. Over time, Michael found that listening closely helped him use these terms himself. He started using feedback loop in conversations, and his ability to explain things at work improved. He even started leading meetings where he had to explain complex ideas to others, and his listening practice was a huge factor in his success. This story is a great example of how listening can improve your professional life. When you listen, well, you can understand complex topics, ask meaningful questions, and contribute to conversations with confidence. And don't worry if you don't get everything right away. Listening takes time, and it's okay to ask for clarification whenever you need it. The most important thing is that you stay engaged and keep practicing. Now, let's take a step back and think about how listening can also improve your relationships with others. This is an area where listening is extremely powerful. Have you ever had a conversation where you were so focused on what you wanted to say that you didn't really listen to the other person? Maybe you were talking to a friend, a colleague, or even your partner, and instead of listening, you were just waiting for your turn to speak. This is something I noticed with my friend Sarah. Sarah has been married for a few years, and she always told me how important it was for her and her husband John to communicate well. But one day she told me something interesting. She said, "I think I'm a good listener, but I've realized that sometimes I'm not really listening. I'm just thinking about my reply." This is something a lot of people experience, especially in fast-paced conversations. We're so focused on our own thoughts that we miss the important details in what the other person is saying. Sarah realized this and decided to work on it. She started practicing active listening, which means paying full attention to the person speaking and really trying to understand what they're saying. One evening, Sarah and John were talking about their plans for the weekend. Sarah started speaking about her idea of visiting a park. But instead of just replying right away, John listened carefully. He asked her, "What do you like most about the park?" Sarah was surprised because John had never asked her this kind of question. As they kept talking, they both realized that by listening more carefully, they understood each other's ideas better. John found out that Sarah liked to visit the park to relax and enjoy nature, while he thought it was more of an active place for sports and walking. By listening closely, they were able to plan their weekend in a way that made both of them happy. This story is a great example of how listening can improve personal relationships. When you listen actively, you get a deeper understanding of the other person's thoughts, feelings, and ideas. You can connect better, solve problems together, and avoid misunderstandings. In fact, listening carefully can sometimes be even more important than speaking because it shows respect and care for the other person. Now, let's shift gears and think about how listening helps in learning new skills. One of my students, Elena, is a great example of this. Elena is passionate about cooking and always wanted to improve her skills in the kitchen. She could read recipes and watch cooking shows, but there was one thing that always made her nervous: following along in English. At first, Elena was afraid of missing important steps because English cooking videos used so many specific terms, and the hosts spoke so quickly. But Elena decided to face her fear head-on. She started watching cooking tutorials online, but instead of just watching them passively, she listened carefully to the instructions. For example, In one video, the host said, "First, you need to sauté the onions until they're golden brown." Elena didn't just hear the words. She paid attention to the cooking technique. She repeated the word sauté and made sure she understood what it meant. Over time, Elena became more confident in her cooking skills because she listened closely to the instructions. She started trying new recipes, experimenting with different ingredients, and getting better at following directions. Listening helped her understand the language of cooking and allowed her to improve her skills. Elena's story shows us how listening can help you learn new things, even things you thought were too difficult at first. When you listen carefully, you pick up on important details that help you improve. Whether it's cooking, playing an instrument, or learning a new hobby, listening is key to success. And here's the best part. Once you start listening carefully in one area of your life, you can apply those skills to other areas too. So if you're practicing English listening, try to listen more closely in other situations, whether it's at work, at home, or while learning something new. The more you listen, the better you'll get at understanding and communicating. So I hope you're starting to see how powerful listening really is. It's not just about hearing words, it's about understanding them, applying them, and using them to improve different parts of your life. As we continue, I'm going to share more ways that listening can make a huge difference in your English journey and in your daily life. Ready to keep going? Let's do it. Imagine you're at a job interview. Now, job interviews can be stressful, right? There are so many things you want to say, and sometimes the nerves can make it hard to focus. But what if I told you that your listening skills can actually give you an advantage in this situation? Let's look at how one of my students, Javier, was able to turn his nerves into confidence using his listening abilities. Javier was preparing for a big interview with a company he had dreamed of working for. He had all the right answers ready, in his head. He even practiced in front of the mirror. But when the interview started, he realized that the interviewer was speaking much faster than he had expected. He was having trouble catching every word, and this made him nervous. He was afraid he might miss an important question or not understand something correctly. But then he remembered a key tip. Don't focus on speaking perfectly. Focus on listening carefully. Javier told himself to take a deep breath and pay attention to every word the interviewer said. Instead of panicking, he tried to break down what the interviewer was saying into smaller pieces. For example, the interviewer asked, "Can you tell me how you handled a difficult project in the past?" Javier knew he had an answer for that, but he took a moment to focus on the exact words. He repeated the question in his head. How did you handle a difficult project? By listening carefully, he was able to give a thoughtful answer. Javier's story shows how listening closely can help you respond with confidence in situations like job interviews. If you're able to really understand the question being asked, you can take your time and give the best response. In his case, listening carefully to the interviewer's words helped him calm down and deliver his answer more clearly. This skill doesn't just help you in interviews. It can be valuable in meetings, presentations, or any professional situation where you need to listen and respond to others. But it's not just about work. Listening plays a big role in how we interact with our friends and family too. Let me tell you a story about something that happened to me with my cousin Leo. Leo and I are close, but we don't always see eye to eye on everything. Sometimes, we disagree about things, and it can lead to arguments. One evening, Leo and I were having dinner at our aunt's house. We were talking about a family trip, and I felt like Leo wasn't listening to my opinion. I was explaining why I thought we should visit a different city, but he kept interrupting me and didn't seem to hear me. Instead of getting frustrated, I decided to try something different. I told Leo, "Hey, I really want to hear your thoughts, but can you listen to me first? I feel like we're talking over each other." Leo paused, and it was clear that he hadn't realized he was interrupting me. He apologized, and we started listening to each other more carefully. I explained my reasons for the trip in more detail, and Leo listened closely. When it was his turn, he gave me his thoughts. By listening actively, we were able to have a more respectful conversation, and we both came up with a solution that worked for both of us. Instead of letting our disagreement turn into an argument, listening carefully to each other helped us understand each other's perspectives. This is something we can all practice in our relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or even in romantic relationships. You see, listening isn't just about hearing the words, it's about understanding and connecting with people on a deeper level. When we listen well, we can communicate more clearly, solve problems together, and avoid unnecessary conflicts. This is true in all kinds of relationships, and improving your listening can help you become a better communicator in every part of your life. Let's take a moment to think about how listening can help us learn new things, even in areas outside of language. Remember that Elena, my student who wanted to improve her cooking skills? Well, her success didn't stop at cooking. As Elena listened more carefully to cooking tutorials, she started to notice other things. She realized that listening carefully in one area, like cooking, made her more confident in other areas too. For example, Elena decided to try learning a new language after her cooking experience. She found that the skills she developed from listening closely in English also helped her with language learning. She could follow the teacher's instructions better, understand new vocabulary faster, and feel more confident speaking to native speakers. But what if we applied this to something more practical, like learning to drive? Learning to drive can be a huge challenge for many people. I have a friend named Lucas who was terrified of driving when he first started. Every time his driving instructor gave instructions, Lucas was so nervous that he couldn't focus on what was being said. He was constantly worried about making mistakes, but Lucas made a decision. He knew that if he wanted to drive confidently, he needed to improve his listening skills. So instead of focusing on his fear of driving, he started paying closer attention to the instructor's words. He listened carefully when the instructor explained things like, "Turn right at the intersection," or "Slow down as you approach the stop sign." Over time, Lucas started to relax because he was confident that he could follow the instructions. His improved listening helped him stay calm and drive safely. Eventually, Lucas passed his driving test with flying colors. His story shows us that listening isn't just important in conversations. It's key to learning practical skills too. Now let's talk about something else where listening plays a big role. Learning how to be a better teacher. For instance, I once helped a student named Clara who wanted to improve her English skills. She was a teacher herself, teaching math at a local school, and she was very good at explaining complex topics. But when it came to teaching English, she felt unsure because she didn't know how to explain things clearly enough to her students. We decided to focus on listening. I told Clara to pay attention to the way her students responded during lessons. If a student didn't understand something, Clara could adjust her teaching method based on their reaction. For example, if a student looked confused when she explained a math concept in English, Clara could explain the idea differently or give more examples. By listening to her students' feedback, both verbal and nonverbal, Clara became a more effective teacher. She was able to understand what her students needed and how to help them learn better. It's a great reminder that listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about interpreting those words and understanding how they fit into a bigger picture. Clara's story is a great example of how listening can help improve your professional skills too. Whether you're a teacher, a manager, or someone working in customer service, listening closely can help you understand people's needs and give better advice or solutions. Now let's shift our focus again and talk about how listening can make a difference in your everyday decisions. For instance, let's say you're out shopping for groceries. The store is busy, and you need to find a specific item, like fresh fruit or bread. As you listen to the announcements or the store employees talking to each other, you can pick up helpful information. For example, let's say you're looking for a special kind of bread, and you overhear an employee telling a customer that the bakery is just about to restock it. You didn't directly ask for help, but by listening to the conversation, you found out exactly when the bread you wanted would be available. This is a great example of how paying attention to your surroundings and listening to others can help you make smarter decisions in your daily life. By listening carefully to what's going on around you, you can gain valuable information that saves you time, money, and effort. Whether it's in a store, at a restaurant, or even while traveling, listening can help you navigate your day more smoothly. So, as you can see, listening is a powerful tool that can impact many areas of your life. Whether it's in your personal relationships, your career, your hobbies, or just daily decisions, improving your listening skills will help you communicate better and make more informed choices. Keep practicing, keep listening, and watch how much it improves your English and your life. Ready to dive even deeper? Let's go. All right, let's keep going. We're really getting into how powerful listening skills can be, and I want to take this even further. Listening is one of the most important skills not only for improving your English, but for succeeding in life. Whether you're at work, talking, with friends, learning something new, or traveling, being a good listener helps you in every situation. Let's think about something really practical. Understanding directions. Imagine you're in a new city, and you're trying to find a specific building, like a library or a hospital. You stop someone on the street and ask for help. The person says, "Go straight for 2 blocks, then turn right at the traffic light. Walk past the supermarket and you'll see the library on your left." Now, if you don't listen carefully, you might miss an important part of those directions. You could turn too early, go the wrong way, or miss the right landmark. But if you focus and listen well, you can repeat those steps in your head and find your way without any trouble. This is why listening closely matters so much in everyday situations. It saves you time, reduces stress, and helps you get where you need to go. But listening isn't just about understanding words. It's also about noticing how people say things. For example, if you're asking for directions and the person sounds uncertain, maybe they say, "I think it's 2 blocks, but I'm not sure." That's important information too. By listening to their tone, you understand that you might want to double-check those directions with someone else. Listening also helps when you're learning a new skill. Let's say you've started a new job and your boss is teaching you how to use a piece of equipment or a computer program. They explain the steps. First, log in with your ID. Then open the system, click on the Reports tab, and select the Our Monthly Report. If you miss even one step because you weren't fully listening, you might struggle to complete the task correctly. But if you listen carefully and maybe even repeat the steps to yourself, you'll remember them better. You can also ask questions if something isn't clear, ones like, "Did you say the Reports tab or the Records tab?" This way, listening not only helps you understand, but also shows that you care about doing things right. Listening is especially important in customer service jobs. Imagine you work in a cafe and a customer orders a coffee with no sugar and oat milk. If you only half listen and give them regular milk or add sugar by mistake, the customer won't be happy. But if you listen carefully and even repeat their order. "So that's 1 coffee with oat milk and no sugar, right?" You show them that you're paying attention and value their preferences. Listening well can also help you avoid misunderstandings. Let me tell you about a time when I learned this lesson myself. I was helping a friend plan a surprise party. She asked me to pick up some decorations and a chocolate cake. I was in a hurry and only half listened. I thought she said vanilla cake. So I bought vanilla, and when I showed up at the party, my friend was really disappointed. She had told me twice that the birthday person's favorite was chocolate, but because I didn't listen carefully, I missed an important detail. This Small mistake taught me how valuable it is to listen fully before taking action. Since then, I always make sure to repeat important information and confirm details to avoid confusion. Listening carefully also helps you learn faster. Imagine you're taking an English class, and your teacher is explaining the difference between similar words like hear and listen. If you're not fully focused, you might miss the explanation and keep using the words incorrectly. But when you listen closely, she didn't just hear the words. She paid attention to how they were said, the rhythm of the sentences, and the tone of the speakers. She repeated the sentences out loud and even tried writing down what she heard. Over time, her listening became sharper, and her speaking skills improved too. Listening also helps you pick up new vocabulary naturally. For example, if you hear someone say, "I'm running late because of traffic," and you don't know what running late means, you can guess from the situation. You realize they're probably going to arrive after the expected time. This way, listening gives you context to understand new words without needing a dictionary. Another great thing about listening is how it improves your social skills. When you really listen to someone, not just waiting for your turn to speak, you make them feel heard and respected. If a friend is telling you about a problem they're facing, and you listen without interrupting, they'll trust you more and appreciate your support. Listening well also helps you respond more thoughtfully. Let's say your coworker shares an idea in a meeting, and instead of just agreeing without thinking, you listen carefully and add, "That's a great idea. Maybe we could also add a feedback section to the report you mentioned." By listening fully, you're able to contribute more meaningfully and show that you value their input. In negotiations, listening can even help you reach better outcomes. If you're discussing a project with a client and they say, "We need this done quickly, but quality is very important," you understand that both speed and quality matter. By listening carefully, you can suggest a realistic timeline that meets their needs without compromising on quality. Listening can also help you stay safe. Think about crossing a busy street. If you hear a car horn or the sound of tires approaching quickly, you know to stop and wait. By paying attention to sounds around you, you avoid accidents and stay aware of your environment. One more benefit of listening well is improving your memory. When you listen actively, really focusing on what's being said, your brain processes and stores the information better. If your teacher gives you instructions for a project or your boss explains an important task, listening closely helps you remember those details without needing constant reminders. Listening even helps in emergencies. Imagine someone calls for help in a crowded place. If you're paying attention and listening carefully, you can respond quickly and maybe even prevent a serious situation from getting worse. So far, we've talked about how listening helps in daily life, at work, in learning, and in relationships. But there's one more area where listening makes a huge difference: understanding people's emotions. When someone is upset or stressed, the way they speak changes. Their voice might get quieter or faster. By listening not just to their words but also to their tone and body language, you understand how they're feeling and how best to respond. For example, if a friend says, "I'm fine," but their voice sounds tense and their face looks sad, you know they're probably not fine. By listening carefully and offering support, you show them you care and strengthen your relationship. Listening is also a key part of leadership. Good leaders don't just give orders. They listen to their team's ideas, concerns, and feedback. When people feel heard, they're more motivated and engaged. If you're ever in a leadership role, strong listening skills will help you guide and inspire others more effectively. I hope you're starting to see just how valuable listening is. It's not just a language skill. It's a life skill. By improving your listening, you become a better communicator, a faster learner, a more thoughtful friend, and a more effective professional. Let's keep going. There's so much more to explore. All right, let's dive even deeper into why listening is so powerful and how you can use it to improve your English and your everyday life. Listening is not just about hearing words, it's about understanding meaning, picking up on emotions, and connecting with people. And when you listen carefully, you also learn how to speak more naturally and write more clearly. That's why this skill is so important, not just for learning English, but for becoming a better communicator overall. Let's take a moment and think about how you feel when someone really listens to you. Imagine you're talking to a friend about something important. Maybe you had a hard day at work and you want to share your experience. You start explaining what happened, and your friend looks at their phone or interrupts you before you finish. How would you feel? Probably frustrated or ignored, right? But if your friend makes eye contact, nods, and waits until you're finished, before responding, you feel understood and respected. That's the power of listening. It shows people that you care about them and their words. Now think about how you can use this same skill when you're learning English. Let's say you're in an English class and your teacher is explaining a grammar rule, like the difference between present perfect and past simple. If you only half listen because you're distracted or thinking about something else, you might miss an important part of the explanation. But if you focus, take notes, and really try to understand, you'll remember the rule much better. You'll also be able to use it correctly when you speak or write. One of the best ways to improve your listening skills is to listen to real-life conversations. That's why this podcast is so helpful. You get to hear natural, everyday English spoken, clearly and at a good pace. But you can also practice by listening to people around you. If you live in an English-speaking country, pay attention to how people talk in shops, at work, or on public transport. Notice the phrases they use and the way they pronounce words. If you don't live in an English-speaking country, you can still listen to English by watching interviews, listening to podcasts, or even joining online conversation groups. Let me tell you a story about my friend Daniel. When Daniel moved to an English-speaking country for work, his speaking skills were pretty good, but his listening skills needed some work. He often found it hard to understand fast conversations, especially when people used slang or informal phrases. One day, his boss asked him to drop by the office later to discuss a project. Daniel didn't know the phrase drop by, so he missed the meeting because he didn't realize it meant visit the office. After that, Daniel decided to focus on his listening skills. He started listening to English podcasts every day, on his way to work. He paid attention not just to the words, but also to how people expressed their ideas and emotions. He also practiced repeating sentences out loud to improve his pronunciation and intonation. Within a few months, his listening improved so much that he could follow fast conversations without any trouble. He even started using some of the new phrases he learned in his own speech, which made his English sound more natural and fluent. Listening carefully also helps you become a better writer. When you listen to well-structured sentences and clear expressions, you learn how to organize your thoughts and communicate more effectively. For example, if you listen to someone tell a story, you notice how they set the scene, introduce the characters, and build up to the main event. You can use the same structure when you... Let's practice with a quick exercise. Imagine you're at a family dinner, and your uncle, Mr. Smith, starts telling a story about his first job. He says, "When I was 18, I got my first job at a small bakery. It wasn't easy. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. every day to help prepare the bread and pastries. But I learned a lot about hard work and responsibility. My boss, Mrs. Johnson, was very strict, but she also taught me how to be patient and organized. Thanks to that experience, I became much more disciplined, and it helped me in every job I had after that." Now, if you listen carefully to Mr. Smith's story, you'll notice a few important things. First, he sets the scene by telling you how old he was and where he worked. Then he explains the challenges he faced and how he overcame them. Finally, he shares the lessons he learned and how they helped him in the future. This kind of storytelling structure is very common in English. And by listening to stories like this, you learn how to tell your own stories more clearly and naturally. Listening also helps you improve your vocabulary. Let's say you're listening to a conversation at work and your colleague says, "I'm swamped with work today. There's so much to do." Even if you've never heard the word swamped before, you can guess from the context that it means very busy. By paying attention to the words people use and the situations they use them in, you expand your vocabulary without even needing a dictionary. Another great way to improve your listening skills is to practice active listening. Active listening means focusing completely on the speaker, avoiding distractions, and making sure you understand what they're saying. You can show you're listening by nodding, making eye contact, and responding with short phrases like, "I see," "That makes sense," or "Really?" This not only helps you understand better, but also makes the conversation more enjoyable for both of you. Let me give you an example from my own life. A few months ago, I was talking to my friend Emma about a problem she was having at work. She said, "I feel really overwhelmed because my manager keeps giving me new tasks without checking if I have time for them. I want to do a good job, but it's getting hard to keep up." Instead of offering advice right away, I practiced active listening. I said, "That sounds really stressful. It must be hard to manage all those tasks at once." By listening carefully and responding thoughtfully, I showed Emma that I understood her feelings. She appreciated that I took the time to listen, and it helped her feel less alone in her situation. Active listening also helps you avoid misunderstandings. Imagine your husband or wife asks you to pick up some groceries on your way home from work. They say, "Please get some eggs, milk, and a loaf of bread." If you're distracted and only hear milk and bread, you'll forget the eggs and have to make another trip to the store. But if you listen carefully and maybe even repeat the list out loud, "Okay, eggs, milk, and bread," you'll remember everything and avoid extra hassle. Listening well also helps you build stronger relationships. When people feel heard and understood, they trust you more and enjoy talking to you. This is especially important in professional settings. If your boss gives you feedback on your work, listening carefully shows that you respect their opinion and are willing to improve. If a colleague shares an idea in a meeting, listening and responding thoughtfully shows that you value their contribution. One more way to boost your listening skills is to take notes. When you listen to a lecture, a podcast, or even a conversation, writing down key points helps you remember and understand the information better. You don't need to write every word. Just focus on the main ideas and any new vocabulary. Later, you can review your notes and practice using the new words and phrases in your own sentences. Listening is a skill that takes time and practice to develop, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the better you listen, the better you'll understand, speak, and write in English. Let's keep going. There's still so much more to explore. Let me share a story that will help you practice these skills. This is about a man named Peter who decided to take a trip to the countryside to relax. He had been feeling stressed from work and needed some time to unwind. As he arrived at the small village, he saw a cozy little cafe where he decided to stop for a coffee. When he entered, the barista greeted him with a warm smile and asked, "What can I get for you today?" Peter ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window, looking out at the beautiful landscape. As he sipped his coffee, an old man sitting at the table next to him struck up a conversation. "You must be new here," the man said. "I don't recognize your face." Peter smiled and replied, "Yes, I'm just passing through. I needed a break from the city life." The old man chuckled and nodded. "You'll find peace here, my friend. This village has a way of calming the soul." Now, let's break down this story. From the language used, you can tell that Peter is relaxed and calm, just like the old man. The phrases like passing through and needed a break are common expressions for someone who is traveling to unwind or escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Notice how the old man uses the phrase, "I don't recognize your face," which is a simple but friendly way to start a conversation. These are the types of phrases you can use in your own conversations, whether you're meeting someone for the first time or talking about your own experiences. By listening to stories like this, you'll not only improve your listening skills, but also learn useful vocabulary and phrases for everyday conversations. Another great way to practice listening is by using language learning apps or online resources. There are many websites and apps that offer free podcasts, videos, and listening exercises that can help you improve your skills. Some apps even allow you to slow down the audio so that you can listen at your own pace. This is especially useful if you're just starting to improve your listening skills, or if you're listening to something more difficult. When you listen to podcasts or watch videos, try to listen for specific things. For example, focus on the verbs used in the story or pay attention to how the speaker introduces new ideas. You can also write down any new vocabulary words that you hear and look them up later. After you've listened to the audio, try summarizing it in your own words. This will help you practice your writing and speaking skills too. Thank you for your patience. Now let's continue exploring how you can use listening to boost your English skills even more, and why it's such an important part of learning the language. As you listen to English, not only do you hear new words and phrases, but you also gain a better understanding of how English works in real-life situations. Listening helps you learn the natural flow of conversations, how to express ideas clearly, and even how to respond appropriately. These skills are invaluable when it comes to improving your writing and speaking abilities. When you start listening actively, you'll begin to notice how people use different tones and rhythms to communicate their emotions and ideas. For example, imagine you're listening to a conversation between two friends. One friend is excited about a new project, and the other is giving advice. The friend who is excited might speak faster, with a higher tone, while the one giving advice could speak more slowly and with a calm tone. By listening carefully to the tone and pace of their speech, you can understand not just the words but also the feelings behind them. This is something that's often harder to pick up from reading, which is why listening is such an essential skill for becoming a fluent English speaker. Let me share a story that highlights this point. A few years ago, my colleague Sarah was preparing for a big presentation at work. She had done all her research and written a detailed report, but she was still nervous. The night before the presentation, I sat down with her to go over her speech. Instead of just reading through the words, I asked her to listen to how the sentences would sound aloud. As we practiced, I noticed that she was speaking too quickly when introducing important points, and the excitement in her voice made it hard for her audience to follow. I suggested she slow down and emphasize the key points with a deeper, more serious tone. After practicing this way, Sarah's presentation was much clearer, and she felt more confident when speaking in front of her audience. She realized that listening to the rhythm and flow of her own speech made all the difference. This shows us how paying attention to speech patterns can help you improve your own speaking abilities. Just like Sarah did, you can practice listening to your own voice and adjust how you speak. Try recording yourself speaking about a topic and then listen to it again. Are you speaking too quickly? Are you stressing the important words? This self-feedback can be an excellent way to improve both your speaking and listening skills at the same time. In addition to listening to yourself, you can also learn a lot by listening to others. One great way to improve your listening is by practicing with people from different English-speaking backgrounds. For example, if you're used to listening to someone with a British accent, try listening to someone with an American or Australian accent. The more you expose yourself to different accents, the better you'll become at understanding different ways of speaking. This is an especially helpful skill when you're traveling or working in international settings, where you may encounter people from all over the world. Let's go back to a story from my friend Emma. She recently visited Canada for a business trip. Emma is fluent in English, but she had trouble understanding some of the local slang and accent in certain parts of the country. She wasn't used to hearing such a strong regional accent, and it made it difficult to catch everything people were saying. To improve her listening skills, she started watching videos and listening to podcasts made by people from that region. At first, she could only catch a few words, but after a week of consistent practice, she started picking up on more and more. By the end of her trip, she felt much more confident understanding and communicating with the locals. This example shows that by pushing yourself to listen to different styles of English, you can improve your ability to understand not just one form of English, but many. The key is to keep challenging yourself with new accents, different speaking speeds, and various topics of conversation. You don't have to understand everything perfectly. It's okay to not catch every word. The important thing is to listen closely, try to pick out key words, and understand the main ideas. Another way you can improve your listening skills is by practicing with stories. Stories are a great way to hear natural language, as they often include interesting dialogue, descriptive details, and a mix of formal and informal language. When listening to a story, try to focus on understanding the overall meaning, but also pay attention to the vocabulary and thank you for your patience. Let's continue to explore how listening can significantly improve your English skills, especially in real-life situations. One key reason why listening is so essential is that it helps you understand the natural flow of conversation. In English, like in any language, people don't always speak in perfectly structured sentences. They often use contractions, informal expressions, and slang that might not appear in textbooks, but are essential for communicating effectively in daily life. Listening to natural conversations helps you learn how to understand these informal phrases. For example, instead of saying, "I am going to the store," many people in casual conversations would say, "I'm going to the store," or even just, "I'm going to the store." These subtle differences in how words are said can make a big difference in how quickly and easily you understand English when speaking with native speakers. It's something that you won't necessarily learn just by reading a textbook or practicing formal English rules. Listening is crucial because it gives you a deeper understanding of how people actually speak. Let's talk about another real-life story that illustrates this point. A few months ago, my friend John, who is an English learner, took a trip to New York City. He had been studying English for years, but when he arrived, he had trouble understanding the local people. They spoke so quickly and used so many phrases he had never heard before. He was especially confused by how the locals used slang in their everyday conversations. John told me about an experience he had in a coffee shop. He was standing in line, and when it was his turn to order, the barista said, "What's up?" John froze. He had no idea how to respond. Was it a question? Or was the barista just greeting him casually? In the end, he smiled and said, "Hi." But he felt a little awkward because he wasn't sure what to say next. This story is a great example of how listening helps you understand different ways of greeting and communicating. The phrase, "What's up?" is an informal greeting that's commonly used in many English-speaking countries, especially in urban areas like New York. It doesn't require a long or detailed answer. A simple "hi" or "not much" is enough. If John had spent more time listening to natural conversations, he would have been more prepared for this type of situation. By exposing yourself to everyday conversations like this, you'll begin to recognize these kinds of informal greetings and other phrases that are used in real life. Now let's think about how you can take this kind of listening practice and use it to improve your writing skills. As you listen to natural conversations, you start to hear how people transition between topics, how they emphasize certain words, and how they organize their thoughts. All of this can help you improve your writing as well. When you write, you're often thinking about how to express your ideas clearly and in a way that will make sense to your readers. Thank you for your patience. Let's continue to explore how listening can significantly improve your English skills, especially in real-life situations. One key reason why listening is so essential is that it helps you understand the natural flow of conversation. In English, like in any language, people don't always speak in perfectly structured sentences. They often use contractions, informal expressions, and slang that might not appear in textbooks, but are essential for communicating effectively in daily life. Listening to natural conversations helps you learn how to understand these informal phrases. For example, instead of saying, "I am going to the store," many people in casual conversations would say, "I'm going to the store," or even just, "I'm going to the store." These subtle differences in how words are said can make a big difference in how quickly and easily you understand English when speaking with native speakers. It's something that you won't necessarily learn just by reading a textbook or practicing formal English rules. Listening is crucial because it gives you a deeper understanding of how people actually speak. Let's talk about another real-life story that illustrates this point. A few months ago, my friend John, who is an English learner, took a trip to New York City. He had been studying English for years, but when he arrived, he had trouble understanding the local people. They spoke so quickly and used so many phrases he had never heard before. He was especially confused by how the locals used slang in their everyday conversations. John told me about an experience he had in a coffee shop. He was standing in line, and when it was his turn to order, the barista said, "What's up?" John froze. He had no idea how to respond. Was it a question? Or was the barista just greeting him casually? In the end, he smiled and said, "Hi." But he felt a little awkward because he wasn't sure what to say next. This story is a great example of how listening helps you understand different ways of greeting and communicating. The phrase, "What's up?" is an informal greeting that's commonly used in many English-speaking countries, especially in urban areas like New York. It doesn't require a long or detailed answer. A simple hi or not much is enough. If John had spent more time listening to natural conversations, he would have been more prepared for this type of situation. By exposing yourself to everyday conversations like this, you'll begin to recognize these kinds of informal greetings and other phrases that are used in real life. Now let's think about how you can take this kind of listening practice and use it to improve your writing skills. As you listen to natural conversations, you start to hear how people transition between topics, how they emphasize certain words, and how they organize their thoughts. All of this can help you improve your writing as well. When you write, you're often thinking about how to express your ideas clearly and in a way that will make sense to your readers. Listening to people speak naturally helps you develop a sense of how to do this more effectively. For example, think about a conversation where someone is telling a story about a recent event. They might begin with a phrase like, "So, last weekend, I went to this amazing restaurant," or "I've got to tell you about what happened last Friday." These types of transitions help guide the listener through the story and make it more interesting. If you listen closely, you'll notice how speakers use these transitions to keep their conversations flowing smoothly. You can use the same techniques in your writing to make your sentences more engaging and easier to follow. One thing that can be helpful is practicing active listening. Active listening means paying full attention to what the speaker is saying, without interrupting or thinking about what you're going to say next. Instead of just hearing the words, you focus on understanding the message behind them. Active listening is a skill that will help you in many areas of life, not just learning English. It helps you understand not just the words, but also the tone, body language, and emotions behind what's being said. Let me tell you about how active listening helped my friend Lucy. She was preparing for an important interview for a job she really wanted. She had all the qualifications and experience needed, but she was nervous about the interview itself. So she decided to listen to some podcasts where people were talking about their interview experiences. Lucy didn't just listen to the words. She paid close attention to how the speakers explained their answers, how they responded to questions, and how they kept the conversation flowing smoothly. The more she listened, the more she felt ready to face her own interview. She learned how to listen carefully, respond confidently, and even ask follow-up questions, which is exactly what she did in her own interview. In the end, Lucy got the job. Now let's talk about something else that can make a huge difference in your English learning journey. Using real-life stories to practice your listening skills. Real-life stories are a fantastic way to improve your listening because they often include natural speech patterns, vocabulary, and expressions that you'll encounter in everyday situations. When you listen to these stories, you're not just hearing random words, you're understanding how people use language to communicate emotions, ideas, and experiences. Take a look at this story from my friend Mark. A couple of years ago, Mark went on a hiking trip with his wife, Rachel. They decided to visit a national park, and although they were excited, they didn't know what to expect. As they started their hike, they got lost. They had no cell phone signal, and the trail wasn't clearly marked. Mark said they were both nervous at first, but then they remembered what their guide had told them. If you ever get lost, just stay calm and look for signs. So they took a deep breath and followed the advice. After a few hours, they finally found their way back to the main trail. Mark said that although it was a stressful experience, it taught him the importance of staying calm in difficult situations. Now, if you were to listen to Mark's story, you'd hear how he used phrases like staying calm and look for signs to explain what they did. These phrases are simple but powerful. By listening to how he tells the story, you learn not just vocabulary but also the flow of the conversation. You understand how Mark described the problem, how he communicated his feelings of nervousness, and how he solved the situation. You can use similar techniques in your own English writing and speaking. By listening to more stories like this, you'll get used to the way people tell personal experiences, how they explain challenges, and how they share their thoughts and feelings. These are all useful skills to have, whether you're speaking with a friend, writing an email, or preparing for a presentation. Stories help you understand more than just grammar rules and vocabulary. They give you insight into how language works in real-life situations. Another tip for improving your listening skills is to practice with different types of content. This could be podcasts, news reports, interviews, or even YouTube videos. The variety will expose you to different accents, vocabulary, and topics. It will help you become more flexible in understanding English. For example, if you listen to a news report about a recent event, you'll hear formal language and specific terminology related to that event. If you listen to a casual conversation between two friends, you'll hear informal language, slang, and everyday expressions. Both types of content are useful for improving your language skills. Think about a time when you had to listen to something that wasn't easy to understand, like a lecture or a podcast on a complex topic. At first, it may feel overwhelming, but with practice, you'll start to pick up on the main points. You might not understand every single word, but you'll still get the general idea. This is a valuable skill because it allows you to keep up with conversations, even if you don't understand every single word. It's all about getting the main message and building your confidence as you listen. As you continue practicing your listening skills, keep challenging yourself by listening to different kinds of content, from formal news broadcasts to casual conversations. The more you listen, the more comfortable you'll become with different accents, speeds, and topics.